It's up to you, man. Oh, yes. Continue. Continue.
Yo, yo, what's up, guys? Today I have a very special person with me. It's Shan from
Hi.
Objective Personality System. Now, if you don't know who she is, she has spent years, years studying humans and studying how
Yeah.
people work and stuff. But today we are going to focus on something deeper, like what motivates someone. And the first question I would like to ask you is this. Now, in your profession, you have seen many people avoid truth or run away from demons.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
give some information and they get this reaction,
Yeah.
blah
Yeah.
blah blah. But I really want to understand this this facet of a human where they just avoid truth.
Right. Right. Pain. I mean, honestly, yeah. Yeah. The biggest thing that has been really fascinating to watch is how much pain you actually get by avoiding that pain. But I think if you look at just the human as building, a bunch of Lego blocks that are all just puzzle pieced together, they're not talking to each other. They don't get along with each other. It just feels like some kind of Frankenstein that evolution has evolved to. So you're like, well, but this doesn't serve that other part of the human. Well, that doesn't serve this other part of the human. And it doesn't seem like it matters. It's based on survival. So of course, everything is based on how does the human actually just survive, making it through all of the weather, all of the interactions with other humans, other species, and stuff like that. It's only trying to survive. And the mechanism of pain seems to be one of the higher up mechanisms that governs everything below it. And it's very simplistic. It's very binary. It's don't go towards pain, run away from pain. It's very, very simple. It's so simple that unfortunately it doesn't get along with and work with the mechanism of time. And, how does this actually give me more pain over time? It seems to be an immediate reaction that is just avoid pain at all costs. And that's so fundamental that we can't see it. We have no idea that that's just built into the core of ourselves. And then on top of that, there's this massive, I guess you call it a band-aid, where the unconscious works together with that pain. And, again, it's back to survival. The unconscious is helping you get rid of the pain feelings, get that out of your mind so you can keep moving. Right. But the problem with the unconscious is that it's drowning out the pain, which normally you're like, hey, maybe hold your hand to that fire a little bit longer so you can come up with mechanisms, build that into yourself, build that into your future, so you don't keep doing this same thing again and again and again and again. Right. Yeah. Did you want to respond?
Yeah, no. So, what I'm understanding from what you're saying is that pain is a mechanism, right? You have to go
Yeah.
away from pain. And the thing here that you're trying to highlight, it is subconscious, or what Carl
Yeah.
Jung would say in shadow. So, it's very hard
Yes.
to see. And you're saying if you put your hand on the fire for the first time because you're in it and not responding, it becomes conscious. In Viktor's Frankl's, there's a book called Man's Search and Meaning where
I
this
love that
person,
one. Yeah.
yeah, he
Yeah.
says this, where your power is. He says, you know, you have a stimulus and you have a response, right?
Yeah.
And between the stimulus and the response, you have like a space.
Yes.
And
That,
that's the
yep.
space you have the power in. You don't have the
Right.
power in the stimulus or the response. Once you
Right.
respond, you can't do much.
Right.
But in that space between the stimulus and response is what I think you're saying by holding your
Yes.
hand to the fire, right?
Yes. So much.
But here's a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Like, how does a person define pain? Because what you consider pain is
Right.
not something I define to be painful.
Very good.
So
Very, very
now,
good.
now how is something so subjective, right? It's
Right.
so subjective. You have a different pain, I have a different pain. So objectively speaking, if I have to push it out, it's not real in that sense, right? The
Yes.
thing itself doesn't have the definition of I'm painful. It's more like
Yes.
I am giving the meaning to the thing.
Right.
Right.
1000%. Yeah. So there is obviously objective pain. There is, you actually are standing in fire, and
Yeah.
any human, no matter what, is going to experience that pain. There is actual threat of death. But the fascinating thing about the human is the imagination and is the projection. That one's one that I've been staring at a lot, is that projection mechanism, because the wiring in the brain is hooked up to pain and pleasure individually. And of course, Dave and I have been studying that mechanism, because that's how we type people. We type people
Yeah.
based on their own personal reactions to what is fearful for them and what is painful for them. And this is where we discovered all the cognitive functions connecting to the human needs. And each individual person has that built in our opinion, genetically. This is wired in. And I think it's a beautiful mechanism of evolution where somebody who's scared of this but not scared of that can survive through that problem and work with the other guy who's scared of that, not this. So you have humans overlapping in fears. One's jumping off a cliff while the other one's
Yeah.
holding the rope, and then that one will jump off a cliff and the other one's holding a rope. And if we work together, we're not all as a species freaking out about the same thing and therefore all jumping off cliffs at the same time. It's just a survival mechanism. But yes, 1,000%. The fascinating thing about that, if you can tap into that, you can recognize none of this is actually real. I'm not on fire. I don't have a lion at the back of my neck. I'm still alive. I can still survive. So what is it fundamentally that my brain is designing in my core that is just hooked up to hormones? That's all it is. My genetics is hooked up to these hormones that is saying, this is so bad. This is going to be forever. This is going to take you out. But it's only the imagination that is causing those things built on those wirings and those triggerings. It's the same, just natural triggerings inside the human. And like you were saying, if you can pause, slow down your brain for that space of time, you can then do all of your work needed in this amount of time to go, hold on, I know my math. I know this is me. I know that this isn't coming from outside of myself, because I can look at objectively. I can actually say I'm not on fire, and other people have been able to survive this type of situation just fine. So you can slow down, you can look objectively, you can see that outside world, and then you can ask questions. Where is this coming from internally? And what am I projecting on the universe that is creating a feeling of fear that this
Yeah.
is impossible to live through? And usually it's coming from your brain demanding perfection in some area.
Yeah. Now, what you just said was so beautiful, because I have two follow-up questions which are like completely different tangents.
Yeah.
So we'll start off the one that is, I think, most valuable to the person watching this video, for the
Yeah.
one time. So problem I see with like people just following your content, right?
Right.
Here's the problem, right? As OPS is a tool, right? So
Yeah.
OPS doesn't it so this what you just said is like your values.
Yes.
You have a motivation, you have like a desire, you are seeking something from life, right?
Yeah.
And you're using OPS to like get that, right?
Yeah.
But I might not be seeking that, and they wouldn't be thinking of OPS from that way.
Right.
Some people
Right.
might think OPS like a very complicated Tinder matching thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They'll think
Right.
like, how can I like mix this functions to like get my perfect match, and then I
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
pointless. But
Totally.
now I want to really emphasize on this, because I think it's not said enough, or it's not highlighted enough, this nuanced distinction between how you chose to use OPS versus how people use OPS.
Yeah. Right.
There is like a fundamental distinction there,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
so I would like to like know more about, so how you chose to use OPS, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah. So you're asking how I choose to use it. You're also interested in why others, or yeah, you're just basically asking how I use it.
no,
Honestly,
not just that. The
yeah,
follow up, the actual question, I was setting the context. So the actual question is this. The actual question is, man, I forgot. The actual question is, you are using OPS for to define your values, right?
right,
But then, yeah, this was a question. Because now what really seems to matter is the values that you have rather than the OPS knowledge that you have acquired.
right,
Because think
right,
about it, I become aware of my demons, right? I get to know all these problems I have.
right,
But what really solves the problem, if you see, it's really like the value of you getting the courage to like hold against the fire and be
right.
introspective and self-love, compassion,
Yes,
forgiveness, not only to other but yourself, you see.
right.
I feel that is the values that really is important
Yeah, right,
rather than OPS.
right. Yeah, it's just a tool, thousand
Yeah, yeah,
percent.
yeah.
Okay, so let
But what
me
really matters is what I wanted to ask.
well, I would say what really matters, and this, because we've started this for a while now. I would say, and it's funny too that Darren Brown writes a book on it. I honestly think when I'm staring at what the human is trying to get at, and this is every human, this is not just us, this is every single human seems to be trying to get at happiness, and it's not
Yeah.
just. I'm not talking about pleasure. I'm talking about joy. I'm talking about happiness. I'm talking about fulfillment, and also meaning. And I think that those are also just built-in mechanisms of the human brain. I think that's a part of the survival mechanism. There isn't so much meaning when you step back and you're like, but then we're just procreating and then we die. And therefore it brings sadness on the human when you can kind of see, when you step outside of the mechanism of the species, you're watching other species, you're like, what's the point of all of this? That then brings a lot of deep darkness instead of the joy. And when someone can get conscious enough, it also then brings problems of what is the point of all of this. But I do think fundamentally what all of us in our chemicals are seeking, our chemicals, unfortunately, again, this is like mechanisms connecting, or not connecting, are seeking pleasure in the moment for the sake of survival. But what we want when we can stop and pause and look at our lives is we're seeking joy and happiness and fulfillment. So that joy and happiness and fulfillment is blocked by many different situations, of course, right?
Yeah.
There is the pursuit of getting to the top of the mountain. What happens when you get to the top of the mountain? Oh, I need to climb a higher mountain. By the way, these are all just mechanisms of survival that the human species is being, built off of. The desire to go to the top of the mountain is only built into the human species for survival, back to survival again, right? So all of these mechanisms are just built in. And when you can stop and pause and recognize that those don't automatically give you happiness and joy and meaning, you'd have to step outside of that program and start choosing your own pathway, and figuring out what is actually meaningful and what is actually joyful. And you have to take hold of that mechanism. All I'm saying is that what stops everyone from happiness and joy and depth and meaning is the obsession with the default wiring. And most people don't make it out. Most people do not elevate outside of the default wiring because it is almost impossible to see objective reality because of how much the hormones, the wiring, the genetics are triggering all the time of panic, fear, and then the projection from the human onto their reality and assuming that that projection is reality, and therefore trapping themselves in their own fearful state. And that seems to be the reoccurring common mechanism. And the amount we see people using their functions is insane. I would even say this last year, I've had a giant like onion peeling off of my own eyes of how much I'm not seeing objective reality. Even though I've been staring at this for the last 10 years, I'm still going, oh my God, I was having conversations that were not real, but everything I was hearing was filtered through my functions. Everything I was reacting to was coming because of the demand from my brain for perfection in these areas. It wasn't what the information was, because there is an objective reality. There is information that is actually happening, that is outside of the human, that is actually happening. And if you can tap into that, magically, the world is fair. Everything is easy. Everything is positive if you can tap into getting outside of that default wiring. So OP, all it is just us staring at the human functions and the reactions of the human functions and our own selves. And the natural progression that I have taken is going, if discovering these functions then causes more disgruntledness, I'm just not all the way through yet. I'm not all the way through my delusions, because I can see that guy and how panicked he is, even though he's just using his saviors on crack to, like, wow, that's fascinating to see from the outside. If I can see that, and I can see that, and I can see that, it automatically comes back to how much I delusionally can't see. Therefore, the game is, once you can start seeing more, ... you start getting happy. And then when you start tracking people who are, quote unquote free to some degree, Katie Bryan is a good example, where she's like, I don't have I don't have the suffering anymore. And I have tracked their patterns. I have tracked my own default wiring. I've gone all the way through the maze and I got out. And now I have peace and joy and emptiness. And anytime the weather of negative emotions or anxiety comes around, instantly I know the method to go through my brain wiring and checking. If I feel like a victim, it's because I'm feeling, or if I'm feeling sad, angry, anxiety, any of the bad emotions, right? If I'm feeling anything of panic, any of these bad anxiety emotions, whatever, if I'm feeling any of those things, it's because I feel like a victim. And why do I feel like a victim? It's because I believe something about objective reality that isn't true.
You know what it is? It's so funny what you just said, because just before this, yesterday I put out a video and I had like this analogy, I
Yeah.
said the entire spiritual community or whatever you're saying, it's all about letting go, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing: if I'm holding this yellow ring, right, and if you
Yeah.
ask me to let go of this yellow ring, of course,
Yeah.
it's like obvious, right? But if
Right.
I put this yellow ring down, and if you say, "Prem, let go of the yellow ring," now you put me in a very interesting place, Now, how do I let go of something that
Right.
I know I'm not holding on to? I
Right.
feel that's what you're saying, You're using OPS to become aware that the mind, I think, plays a trick on you where it deludes you that, oh, your hands are empty. What are
Yeah.
you talking about? Your hands are empty, even though
Right.
you're holding
Right.
it.
Right.
But you're using OPS to first become aware of the facets of reality that you are holding on to, that's coming
Yes.
from you rather than it's
Yes.
happening to you.
Yes. Yes.
And then you're asking yourself, okay, does this serve me
Right.
personally? Does me
Yes.
being a victim serve me projecting a victim thing serve me?
Thousand
And it
percent.
doesn't. It
Right.
doesn't, most. So you
It
just
does
let
not
go.
bring you joy and happiness. And if the pursuit of every human is actually joy, fulfillment, and happiness, at
Mm-hmm.
that end result never comes if you in some way feel like you are a victim. And I would say examining the like, it's always for me working backwards. If
Yeah.
I'm feeling bad, sad, angry, rage, anxiety, anything, if I'm feeling any of those things, I work backwards and I always trace it back to feeling like a victim. I'm feeling stuck, I'm feeling controlled, and whatever, I'm feeling like a victim. Any of that comes from feeling like a victim. Now I can examine, is this true? So it's like what Byron Katie does,
Yeah. Turn
the
around.
works. Yeah. Is it actually accurate? Is it true? And in certain situations, that's why we brought up the Britney Spears situation. Sometimes it's accurate. Sometimes it is actually true. You are actually being controlled. It is objectively unfair, and therefore you do need to take action and be responsible to get yourself out of that situation. Now, sometimes it's very impossible. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it takes time, but it's still the pursuit of the human to not stay stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's the thing, Now I can look at all this. And what you just said is beautiful, right? That's why I love OPS personally as well.
Right, right.
But if I come from like a personality community,
Yeah.
I am not. Here's the thing, right? Most of the people watching here, you're not learning OPS to like develop yourself or look within. It's all like, okay, how can I control and manipulate others so that I can get what
Yes.
I want from the world?
Yes, very much so.
And here's the thing, it works. This is because a tool is a tool. It does work. You can
Right.
use to see, oh, you know what, my relationship with this person, this human is like not working because I have this function doesn't go with this function. You have like this
Right.
entire astrology as
Right.
concept. But for me, what you seem to be saying is what really matters about OPS as a tool is the opportunity for you to like look within and let go of the
Yes.
packages that
That's it.
you're always
That's
carrying,
it.
and you're
But
saying, if I'm sorry, go
but
on.
this sorry, I'm just going to say the struggle that you're trying to deal with is how many are not going to see. And I think that that's what I've been trying to process for the last 10 years. Sometimes I cry over it. Sometimes I go on long walks because of how many I know aren't going to ever see. And it's sad. It's hard to manage.
Here's the thing, but what motivates a person to see, like, here's the thing, think of it like a new guy, right? I'm
Right.
here, I can use this tool to like get what I want, manipulate people.
Right.
Why should I look within, it makes
Right.
no sense. Why should
Right.
I change myself when I can use OPS to like change everyone around me?
Right.
I get people seeing, people always ask this question, and I know you get this often, hopefully. It is like, oh, you know what? I see OPS everywhere. Everywhere I go, I see people doing their function.
Yeah.
But how do I change that person, How do I change that?
Just all the time. So I'm great. How do they need to grow? You're like, oh
they're doing all this like growth stuff, demon, they have like this demon function. Obviously, they don't see the demons. How can I change them? Shan, give me some solutions, And I'm like,
you're missing the point, bro. They miss it. It just goes right over. Yeah, for sure. It's hard. So I think what you're asking is like, how does one
why should one?
Why should one? Well, why should one is an easy question. Oh, so I'll answer that one. I'll answer the first one first. Sure. Why should one is easy. If you want joy and peace and happiness, you're going to have to see yourself. The amount the self is causing the drama. It's like, am I the drama? You're the drama. The amount someone is causing drama in their own life is insanity. Coming from someone that is the most crazy. Trust me, it's you. You won't see it. It's you. So why you should is because you can actually live a life of being able to be fulfilled and happy. I think a lot of people misunderstand that statement too. I think a lot of people are like, but self-love and, hugs for self and forgiveness for self. It's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about the self. We're talking about the mechanisms that control the self. It's not the self. The self does need a lot of patience. Yeah, because people do need a lot of patience and forgiveness for their own selves, but they need to know what mechanism is fucking with their head in order to project their reality in creating a world that isn't objective. It's not real.
Yeah, oftentimes I see people taking that and what they do is like they downgrade their life. Yeah. And they think, oh, you know what? Let me make my bubble tighter and live in that. And then, but I feel what you're saying is you have an opportunity to see that you have a bubble of infinite radius, but for you to like push forth, you have to like undo all this.
Yes. Right.
Default wiring.
1,000%. Yeah. We stick ourselves in a box. And that's now back to what I was talking about earlier of the evolutionary mechanisms where you get a binary and it's very simple and it doesn't talk to the other one. It's like you have this avoid pain, immediate in this moment, always run away from pain. And yet what that ends up doing is getting you so much more pain over time. And that mechanism of moving back, because you're trying to avoid the immediate pain gets you into a world of infinite pain, because now you are not living a life of happiness. You're not living a life of fulfillment. To me, the analogy is you're in a burning house and you have to run through a wall of, you have to get through the burning door in order to get out of the house. But if you stay here, you die. So what's worse? Well, most people stay. Most people don't move. Most people don't take aggressive action to get through the door and to get out of the burning house so they can survive, because that pain is a little bit more intense than the one that I'm dealing with if I just sit here. But what's sad is if you take yourself and you put yourself way outside of yourself, watching yourself, you're like, get out of the house. But they won't, because it's just easier to move backwards. And a lot of people nearing the end of their life or decades down the road live with massive regret, because they're like, I could have, I should have, I would have, I wish I did. And that's what ends up happening. A lot of people will die with regret because they just kept moving backwards. That's back to the immediate mechanism of avoiding pain. But back to your other question that you're asking is, why did I, or why does one?
Yeah. No, why did you?
I'll tell you why did I.
Not many people choose this path, right?
Yeah, very much so. I've puzzled that a lot. I would guess, and again, subject to change. My thinking on it is something along the lines of what Darren Brown does to try and get you to say, elephant, or to draw a bear with, a wings and gait and stuff like that. Right.
Yeah.
The amount of random sporadic influences. So, connections, emotional connections, series of events. And then also the you finally have had enough. You've cooked in the cooker enough. And then therefore, Darren Brown, random series of events get hit at the right time in the right moment, then your own self can finally click and finally see it. So being able to control an event like that is near impossible. Now you can attempt, you can push for it. I would say I would not have made it out if it weren't for Dave. Dave, in my life, was constantly saying, I wouldn't do that. Well, I would do this. Well, I wouldn't do that. And I would do this. And then, showing me the pathway he took, also watching, certain people that I then got influenced by and watched those certain people and started being able to put together the puzzle pieces my own self. But it's an introverted issue, the person themselves and their own path. That's where all of the action is. And if somebody's identity does not update, you can throw just ridiculous amounts at a person and they will never change. They will never adjust. And I think I heard it one time where it was this woman who used to be a very intense druggie on the streets, and she got sober. And what she said was, people's rock bottom is not always the same. It's honestly crazy when you can see, okay, that's definitely rock bottom. You can see that that's rock bottom. You're sleeping on the streets. You had an overdose. You almost died. You had to get revived. That's got to be rock bottom for you, right? And that person will just go right back to trying to get the high, trying to get the hit, because they didn't do the processing. They didn't do the self-reflection. They didn't do any of the work needed to see there is a better way. I could systematically get out if I chipped away and built my identity. Does that make sense?
Dude, it makes a lot of sense. And I wanted to ask this very philosophical follow-up question that
Yeah.
I've been trying to ask myself. It's
Right.
about evolution, so you're gonna like it. Now, so I always thought, what? I'm driven by survival, and I'm doing all
Yeah.
this stuff, survival, pa,
Right.
pa, 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 pa. But the conversation that we are having right now, I
Right.
sense a desire that is not survival, a
Okay.
desire to know our true self, there's
Yeah.
something bigger, something
Sure.
greater, and I
Sure.
feel that it's anti-survival. I'm not anti-survival. I feel it's a different desire altogether.
Yeah.
There's you have survival, and then you have this desire to connect with your true self, which is not
Yeah.
this program stuck in this because of OPS, blah 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 blah. Something when you get free, you see a higher you, a more fulfilling you.
Yeah.
And you have a desire to pursue that. I think some people call it passion or excitement or something like that. It
Sure.
seems to be independent of surviving.
Okay.
Could you talk more about this?
Let me ask you some questions first,
Yeah, sure.
because when I see that mechanism, I tend to relate it back to the obsession with self survival. So every human is self-obsessed and sees themselves as the God King. And if I don't get to the top of the mountain, me, my own unique individual self, then humanity will die off. And I, my own self, need to go to the top of that mountain because I'm so amazing. I'm so special. And that seems to be a mechanism that's built in. So is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking about something different? Because that's how I usually
No,
see it. And I usually relate those two together.
no, something there are times that people choose things that is against their survival, give to someone when they don't have enough money themselves.
Sure.
You have few moments like that, you
But
always
is that against
survival.
self-survival? Right.
I don't know. It seems to be something bigger. It doesn't seem to be it seems more selfish. When we had the first coaching call, I still
Yeah.
remember crystal clear. You said, I asked you, Shan, if I had to never take a coaching call again, what give me an advice, so that I don't come
And I
back
told you
again.
about building brick walls. Is that what I think I remember that?
No, you
Yeah.
said, Prem, life is about growing and giving. So
Yeah,
you have
that's
to
true.
grow first and then give. I'm
Which
oh,
is
okay.
survival. It's still growing the self and growing the species, which is built
The
in.
distinction is really fine here. But
Yeah.
even if you like take a look at the evolution, like if you take a look at the Neanderthals versus us, we are like more evolved to become aware of more possibilities, you know
Right.
right?
I see where this is going. Infinite possibilities of the
Possibilities.
self. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
But
functions are we talking
people
about?
are more aware of more facets of reality than, let's say, a Neanderthal or a chimpanzee is. Like
Right.
they don't
Right.
understand the concept of death, but we get the opportunity to contemplate of it. That's something
Right.
unique. There's something that's happening
Yeah.
that is pushing the evolution. That's why they call it evolving time.
Yeah. I mean, I would still somehow equate that back to survival.
Survival.
I think what you're asking is to be able to track the motivations of a human. And
Yeah.
when I stare at that, I see the motivations having to do everything with the wiring of the human. I mean, when I see somebody
Yeah.
doing the bow down DE shit of I'm giving, I'm giving, I'm being unselfish, it's still hooked up to wires in the brain
No,
that is
yeah.
saying, if you don't do this, you are a bad person and you should die. Like that's what's so weird about the code, where it's like there's multiple different human needs, and this one's triggered by that one's triggered by this one. This one says if I don't do XYZ, then I should die. This one says if I don't do XYZ, then I should die. And it's still
Yeah.
the projection of the human. But I would still say yes, that absolutely, that these mechanisms are built in for the purpose of um, a highly sophisticated survival machine. I think that we, above other species, have the benefit of being bipedal, have the benefit of growing the brain, of building the tools to then grow the brain even more, to then build the tools to then grow the brain even more, and so forth, and build communities that I think the illusion of complexity is actually very simplistic. I think the mind wants it to be a lot more complicated than it is, and then therefore can't solve a Rubik's
Yeah.
cube, because the more that the brain overcomplicates the situation,
Mm-hmm.
then and a lot of times that goes into like where you project, where you blame, you'll put it into endless complexities, and that stops the mind from going, actually, this is a very simplistic problem. If I sat down, I could solve this in an hour and I would be free. And it again traps the human into their own worldview, into their own non-movable box, and then it creates them into a victim because it creates this complexity. I see that a lot too when people are trying to solve a problem, especially if it's gone on for years. They then can't accept the answer when the answer is so simplistic, because I wrecked relationships over this problem, even though it was super simple. And then,
Yeah.
can't accept usually. I know I took
Yeah.
that in a different direction, but hopefully that
No, no.
helps a little bit.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. So what I'm understanding is like, let's say so it seems that we do have like one motivation, let's to survive. Like I must survive, right? But the
Sure.
sense of I seems to be very arbitrary. Like whose are you? Are you the guy in your body, or are you and your family, or you and your
Right.
community, or you and your country? Where does that
Yeah.
I begin and end?
That's really good. Are you asking? But
No, I
it
was
sounds
I
like,
was like sharing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's exactly what I see.
Yeah.
The I is arbitrary, and I would even say tracking back to the fundamentals of, that's where we use the code, is we see
Yeah.
that people's consistent reoccurring fears um, are if you have a music catalog, there's 512 music catalog. It's very, when I hear your story and I go and I talk to another ENTP that has the same parts, it's the
Yeah.
same exact story, and you're taking actions in the same way to try and resolve the same problem.
Yeah.
And the stories by the thousands are fascinating. It's fascinating to go watch humans that have been designed to see themselves as individualistic and very unique and special, and they are, to some degree they are, because there's still other parts, not just the code, that are added to the human, like the hero's journey. Where are you at on the hero's journey? How much growth mindset do you actually have? Intelligence seems to play a part as well, because you can have somebody that is the same exact type as you but has a lower intelligence.
What
That
does that
the
mean though? In
intelligence,
Yeah.
it seems to be when I'm looking at what intelligence is defined by according to out there, or how I'm using it, it seems to be something where you have more access to different freeways in your mind, where the information can flow back and forth to different parts of your brain. And honestly, if you want to slap also fixed mindset onto that, growth mindset onto that, the
Sure.
growth mindset seems to be where you have access to different parts of your brain, and you're not as scared to cross the highways to get that information. Intelligence does seem to be someone's ability to access information rapidly, is what it seems like. So
Okay.
that's another facet of the person's story, how much they get stuck. You do see somebody with lower intelligence getting stuck a lot more, and then also having fixed mindset a lot. And again, I think that comes genetic. I think that comes from the start, but I also think it's something that you can grow to some degree. Now obviously you can't supersize something that is super small. You can grow it. It's like muscles. It's like you're born
Yeah,
with these kind of muscles, and you can do whatever you can with those muscles, but it's like you're not going to be Phil Heath if you're my size.
yeah, yeah.
you know
No, I understand.
yeah.
Yeah, because what it seems like, let's say parent Katie, for example. Yeah, let's say
Yeah.
she like broke the matrix or whatever, but she's still
Yeah.
doing what gives her like the most fulfillment with her function. And
Yes.
what really seems to change is the relationship that a person have with their code or with their
Yes.
belief system.
So true.
That really seems to be what you are trying to understand and almost like detangle this mess,
A
the
thousand percent.
relationship that you have with your functions rather than the functions.
That is hitting the nail on the head, because what is so fascinating to me is that there isn't a matrix. It is the person in their own matrix. There
Yeah,
isn't a matrix. It is the individual in their own matrix. So when you can get out of your own matrix that you have built and constructed for your own self, then you can see objective reality just fine. And then you can create a balance, a symbiotic balance with your own world. And yes, you're going to use your saviors to do it. But now you get
I
access to
like
your
that.
demon functions because you're not terrified and thinking that the world is unfair and demands it from you right now. You're not creating that kind of dysfunctional world for yourself. But it's only back to the individual. It's the strength of the individual and the freedom that the individual gives its own self that really is where all the power is, from what
So
I've seen and
yeah.
gotten my own self out of. So I mean, it took me 10 years to do it, but I did
So
it.
what you seem to like, I think you put it beautifully right there, where you said OPS is about building this symbiotic loving relationship with your matrix, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now here's like a here's like a follow-up question, okay? But
Okay.
but but why this tribe? I feel there are like tribes better than the current personality tribe. I think most of the
Yeah.
personality tribe is just like, I think there are better tribes than this where people naturally have that kind of
Yes,
values.
for sure.
So yes.
Yeah. Well, it's
So what motivating you to
yes,
like be in this MBTI sphere? Because I feel there are many other spheres that are like much better.
totally. So I think that this is something I've thought about for a long time. I think what we have, benefited from and suffered from is the kill the messenger. So let me use a analogy at the risk of inflating the importance of op. So let's say you find the cure to cancer, right? You're just some
Yeah.
kid in your bedroom, you live in your mom's house, and you accidentally, you're kind of a fuckhead, you kind of cause problems in your own life, but you accidentally discover the cure to cancer. What are you going to do? You're like, well, should probably tell people about this, right? But unfortunately, it's hard to do. It's not, maybe you have to go to the top of a mountain in Batman style, get the blue flower, and then go through training, and just, the percentage of people that can do it or will do it or like the idea of it is small. And then you bring this idea and this concept to just whoever's listening. Unfortunately, it just so happens that Carl Jung's functions are pretty fucking legit.
Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry, I know the psychology community is not a fan of that. Like, wait, what? There's something to that? And I mean, we don't even
Like
use.
your interpretations of Carl Jung functions, right? To be like
Yeah.
more accurate. Mhm.
Yes, of course. Yeah, because I would say he was starting to understand them. I would say his this is again according to me. I know that people have arguments against that, but the human needs connected to his functions and kind of deeper understanding. And I think I honestly think Carl Jung would have figured all this out just fine. But he seemed to tap out, and largely he tapped out because of what we're dealing with now, which is the social aspect of it. People were hounding him, people were beating down his door, kind of thing, and he was just like, "Fuck this!" I tap out. In my opinion, I think that's exactly what he went through
Plus, he
because he
didn't
had
have
luck.
YouTube, you know.
Right. Lucky for him, he did not have the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get all kinds of shit. So that those functions, like what else would you do? I mean, I'm sorry that the cure to cancer. I'm just using this
Yeah.
dumb analogy, but what else would you do? You're like, I guess I go to the Cancer Society. It's like, well, they're ungrateful and they've been in this situation where they don't want an answer. They don't want a cure. They don't like that. They're going to use it for, Tinder and dating each other. They're going to use it they're going to use it to stab each other in the back. They're going to use it to stab
Yeah.
you in the back. They're going to blame you for it. They're going to hate they're going to blame you because I don't want to have to go to the top of the mountain and get a blue flower. I hate you for that. You're like, I'm just the fucking messenger, you
Yeah.
know?
I think partly the reason why I made that comment is because the value that you're coming with is I think the perspective that you and Dave both are coming with is, okay, I want to like recognize what I'm holding on to so I can let go and I just
Sure.
live my life, That is the
Right.
perspective you're coming with. And OPS
Yeah.
just gives you the most opportunities. And I feel it's the best tool around, just self-introspect and get a lot of darkness at once and then have like a system to like do that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that seems to be like a value of your guys, which doesn't necessarily seem like if someone is just trying to find something and he just wants to like let go, and
Right.
recognize what you're holding on to, let go, he would be
Right.
doing that regardless whether he had OPS or not.
Yes.
You know,
There you go. And that's where
it
you're
would just
like,
be faster for them if they learned
yes.
OPS, is what my
Yes.
thing is.
Yes. So how much can you actually influence a human? How much is it even possible? Right. Because
Yeah.
if there's so many different Darren Brown aspects of when the person has had enough and can see themselves in their own life, I mean, what if they're only on stage 1 and you need stage 100 to get to the rock bottom for that person? And you start and you share op with them and they're only at stage 2, but they need to go through this entire journey. They're just going to use op as a tool to attack themselves, a tool to attack others because they can't see anything. They're driving blind, and now it does no good. But the person
Yeah.
that is already seeking and sees op and they're like, that's exactly what's been going on. I have seen my tidal waves. I've had
Yeah.
consciousness of my own tidal waves. I know that I have a blind spot. There is something missing. And I've been in that whole realm. Now, if you're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
in, yeah, and there's people that'll be, let me back up before I go on that train. This will eventually get into other categories on the internet. It's not going to stay in this
Yeah.
community.
God bless, Yeah.
Right, right. And Dave and I are going for the long haul. I know a lot of people are like, why aren't
Yeah.
you doing this right now? Why aren't you doing
Why
this
don't you
right
update your
now?
rules? It's not perfect. The system that you're doing, it's not perfect, Shan. Here's my
Right.
updated understanding of the system. Take it, take it, take it. Now, take it, implement it. What I'm
Right.
saying needs to be a
I have
part
a
of your,
list this
like,
long
bro.
for you guys to do. Like,
Yeah, I'm like,
you go do it.
one thing, here's me, right? I like going
Yeah.
against the OPS tribe because they're such
Yeah.
easy targets. I feel they
Yeah.
like they draw targets behind their back. Like one
Yeah.
thing I absolutely hate about the community, and you might disagree with me here, is like how seriously everyone takes their type and how everyone makes it a big deal.
Right.
Because when
Right.
I got my type, it's like, oh, I'm a ENTP, blah blah blah. Oh, okay, cool, whatever,
Cool.
you know.
Right. Whatever.
Like,
Yeah.
but they're like people. Wait, I'm this, but I
I
wanted to
know.
be this. I'm like, yo, why does it even matter,
Right. Right.
But
That's really
if I
good.
am this and my partner needs to be this, but they're not. Wait, did I mess up? you know, I'm
No,
like,
we need a divorce. You're like, hey, stop it.
yeah. It's so stupid. I feel people take type so seriously.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
what people should take seriously is the perspective that you're approaching typology
Sure.
rather than the typology itself.
But I think what we're talking about here is the timeline and where people are at on the timeline of the journey.
Yeah,
And again, if someone is at stage 1 or 2, even though there's 100
yeah, yeah.
stages before you're even beginning to start seeing objective reality, where you can see you're living in your own matrix, you're causing all your own bullshit. Everything you think is unfair is only coming from inside your own mind. Until you can start seeing that stuff, you're just all the way back at the beginning. So who you're talking about, the categories of who you're talking about, is somebody all the way back at stages 1 and 2, where they're living in a world where shortcuts, this is back to pain avoidance. And honestly, I think that spectrum, that linear line, is someone's ability to manage pain long enough, the Viktor Frankl space between thought and action, or pain and action, whatever it is, that
Stimulus and
space.
response. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Stimulus and response.
Stimulus and response. Thank you for that. That space of stimulus and response, and being able to slow down, like maybe it's this, like
Yeah,
we
yeah.
call them reaction bags.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
just reaction bags. We're just
That's
a bag
nice.
of meat that just reacts.
Bag of
And
flesh.
it's reacting.
Yeah.
Yes, we're just a bag of flesh, and we're reacting off of pain. And if something causes immediate pain, the reaction is to react. And if you have a very short fuse, your stimulus and your reaction is very short. And if you can expand that long enough, and while you're in that space, have a mechanism. I have a mechanism. If I'm feeling pain, stimulus, if I'm feeling pain, anxiety, anything negative, if I'm feeling anything negative in the stimulus realm, I need to slow down my brain and ask myself, why do I feel like a victim? And then go back to my own mechanisms. And I get myself out every single time. I'm not building anything. There's nothing that's getting stored in my deeper buckets of the unconscious anymore. Never again. And I went and I cleaned everything out according to my own function. So I'm free. I'm free of my own inner turmoil. It's gone. Because what happens if
Yeah.
you're in stage 1 or 2, all you're doing is immediately getting the stimulus, having a response, and the response is always blame and unconsciousness. Blame is the
Yeah.
shooting the negative, because it's a hot potato. That stimulus of negativity is a hot potato. You got to throw that off. And of course, people will get typed and they'll be like, I hate this. Dave and Shan visual typed me. Or I saw everybody of
Oh.
my type. I saw everybody of my type. This is so funny. We watch the SEs do this all the time. I saw everybody of my type and I don't relate to them. So therefore that's not me. And it's
Yeah.
heartbreaking, because you're like, hey, you're doing it right now. You're doing your functions right now. Can you pause a little bit and go after why you feel sad, why you feel upset, why you feel anxiety,
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit more, because I feel like the perspective that you have on your life just genuinely like improves people's life, right?
Sure.
But the problem is because you don't communicate with the community that much, you might
Right.
show individual attention, right, here and
Right.
there. However,
Right.
you never really showed any community love. You know what I mean, in like a tribe sense, and it is always
Are
shut
you talking
down.
about
Which
the Facebook? Are you talking about Facebook specifically?
whatever, no, I mean, there is no forum. I honestly would suggest not to join this Facebook. I mean,
Yeah.
not to like be active anywhere, because then people just come at you.
Yeah.
You need like a guinea pig, you need like a
Yeah.
manager or something. So you put
Yeah.
him through all that stuff.
Right.
But I'm
Working
just
on
saying,
it.
no, nice. But what I'm saying is, because there's like a void there, right? Where you
Sure.
don't have, like, you personally don't have the opportunity to like show tribe support, even if you wanted to. That's what I'm trying to say, right?
We don't have a public one, is
Yeah,
what you're saying,
exactly.
because we do have a
Exactly.
private. Yeah, we do have, we email back and do audios and calls with thousands of people.
Exactly.
And I help a group for free on the side on how to type. Do that once every 6 weeks. So we're doing a lot of stuff that just isn't public, so we don't do a lot of
Exactly.
public stuff.
I
Yeah.
know that. I know
Yeah.
you do all the stuff because of how
Right.
many people I talk to. And I know,
Right.
man, stands, but people don't see that side of you, or don't get the opportunity to see that side of you.
Yeah.
And
Right.
because of that, they might feel very, I don't know, not heard, I guess.
Yeah.
Not like, I don't know, man. I called it quits too. So I don't know how it's going now. So
Right. Right. But usually when you do go into, because I have gone into the Facebook group specifically, they're the loudest, they cause the most drama, but they're only like our 10%.
yeah.
And when I've gone in there, what people seem to be barking about, that is, we're not being heard. A lot of times it's stuff that they don't have a deeper understanding on. It's like, why aren't you guys doing XYZ yet? Why aren't you guys doing this yet? So it's like a laundry list of why aren't you doing XYZ? And the lack of understanding of, if they were a business owner, if they had put themselves in the arena, because the joke is, you don't complain about somebody underneath you, you complain about somebody above you, right? You complain about your
Yeah,
mom's not doing enough, your dad's not doing enough, your boss is not doing enough. Those the people that we do talk a lot with, a lot of them are entrepreneurs and business owners that are putting pressure on themselves. They would never ever think of being like, you guys are not doing enough, because they know what it means to run a business. The
yeah,
amount
yeah,
of
yeah,
stuff that it takes to actually do what we're doing is insane. The amount of hours
yeah,
that we work is insane. We're
yeah, yeah.
constantly, and like right now I'm dealing with having to switch from one software, membership software, to another, which is taking me a year. And before that, it took me 2 years just to get a damn search button, right? But everyone's like, why aren't you guys doing X? I'm like, if you would pause and think that through and actually go and do that for your own self and try and figure out how long what you're asking for would take, you would be like, oh, tap the fuck out. That would
Yeah, yeah.
take me 2 years and I would never do it. I am the kind of person that does it. It just takes 2 years. But like, go ahead and go on a forum and go, guys, it's taking me 2 years to get a search button. The amount of people be
No.
like, that's easy,
Yeah,
I can do it. And it's like,
yeah.
okay,
I
I
call it
went through.
advice peacocking. Yeah,
Yes, that advice peacocking. That sounds easy. I could do it. You don't even know. So,
yeah.
a lot of what we're not being heard is coming from people that are asking for things that they don't really understand. They're like, why don't you just go do this tomorrow?
Logistically. Yeah,
Logistically. It's
yeah.
like, yeah. And
Because
the
sorry, go on.
reality, sorry, one last thing and I'll let you talk. The reality is we will do all those things. It's just going to take a way longer than anybody is going to be happy about. And we thought about, for a long time, we thought about never coming out until it was shiny and perfect and wrapped in a bow. We just wouldn't make it. It would take too long for us to do that, you know. So
Yeah, even entrepreneurship doesn't roll that way. It's all about prototyping, and they call minimum viable product MVP.
yeah.
For
Yeah.
the minimal viable, just keep improving it.
Right.
So it's interesting that the group that you're saying about typing, I was one
Yeah.
of the first people in that group to like type people and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Cool.
here's the thing though, in like 1 month, I'm like, for me, it was like, I couldn't consume so many people just talking random stuff. And I'm just waiting for like this couple of seconds of them slipping up and telling what I want to hear to like type them, right? I'm like
Right.
thinking, man, this is like such a stressful process. To just
Yeah.
typing celebrities is one thing. They have a story to tell. They're genuinely just interesting. But like normal people, they're not like that interesting. And most of the time they just like, talk just random stuff,
Right.
which
It's
I
a
feel.
lot of work. Yeah.
So I really want to ask you, like, where do you find meaning in typing so many people? Because
That's a
I
good
really
question.
struggle to, because I really struggle to find, yeah.
It's a good question. Okay, so there's two sides of that, right? Like if it were up to me, we would never have started typing people ever,
Uh, that's
right?
okay.
Why? All it does is it freaks the person out. It opens up a Pandora box. They weren't ready. They weren't here for self growth. They're here for a quick, give me the type I want. Now it's just
Yeah.
causing drama. Now it's
They're
causing
collecting
drama over.
badges. Yeah.
Yeah, collecting badges. Get this Pokemon. No, I want that Pokemon. Just
Yeah.
ridiculous shit, right? So of course, like me personally, I never wanted to have to type. All right. So we do it as a gift and a service, because how cruel would it be for us to be like, and you can't see yourselves? We can, but fuck you. That's just like,
Yeah.
it's such it's such a horrible thing to do. So even though it causes us massive drain and stress and whatever to have to do it, it's so much personal growth to have to go and see the human at their lowest, at their darkest, seeing all their patterns, seeing what really humans are saying when they're talking. It's so much internal work that it is building the self. I would say for me, the typing practice alone is a part of why I finally broke. It's because of the typing process that I finally broke. And there's two facets one, you're seeing other humans and then therefore you can see yourself. And two, the process of having to sit there with patience, slowing down your brain letting the full human come until you're actually seeing the reoccurring patterns. You're getting into their life, you're getting into their fears, you're getting into their mindset, you're seeing humanity more, and then back around, you're seeing yourself again. The biggest Darren Brown hits for me were seeing ladies of my own type, where you're like, you thought that part of your story was real. Oh no, that part is real. No, that part I believe in. And you can't then, for the rest of your life, you can't get away from that story, because you're like, as soon as you go to complain about that, as soon as your brain starts to dramatize that, you're like, and that's the same thing I saw that other lady complaining about. That's the same type as me. So the amount of self-growth that something this hard, this draining, this digging into the human psyche has done for self-growth, I don't know where else I would have found it. It's a lot. So yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Damn, that's amazing. It's crazy. Now, can I ask you like some of the practical stuff you take to relax yourself during stressful times? I know you take
Sure.
like a cold shower, I think.
Yeah, Dave does that more than I do, but yeah, that's something I have
Like
used.
something like that. What else do you do? Let's say the demons hit you. Now you're really panicked. I find it's very hard to think when you have intense emotions, or even operate. So
Right,
how do
for
you
sure.
relax yourself first, personally?
Um, I think the best method for a lot of that stuff, yes, give yourself time once you get reactionary wise. Yes, give yourself quiet time, give yourself a walk, a bath, a walk. You're really just getting away to be able to not react. So if it's stimulus and reaction, is that what it was? The words, I'm
Yeah,
going
yeah.
to feminine sensory forget.
No,
Stimulus
no
and
problem.
reaction.
Yeah.
So if part of the problem is I've already been triggered by the stimulus, I need to avoid reaction. So you're like taking yourself out of the game for a certain amount of time. So yeah, walking, exercising, and then you're getting the chemicals flowing and moving. Anything like that, whether it's working out, whether it's a cold shower, whether it's a hot shower, whether it's a bath, whether it's, talking it out by yourself, you're trying to avoid then reacting and causing more problems in your life, because now you're reacting in a fearful state, and people that react in a fearful state drive cars off cliffs,
Yeah.
hypothetically. So those are some of the things that I used to be really obsessed with. Now I am much more obsessed with not letting something even trigger me in the first place. So it's proactive rather than reactive. And therefore my triggerings have gone down to almost nothing. I mean, it still happens, but it's very small. For me, it took me years, and I had to work it down from 18 hours of drama chemicals to 5 to, all the way down to an hour. And then now it's just, in my mind, I'm sorting out that this fear, this sadness, this anxiety, this whatever is only coming from me being a victim. And that mechanism, that Byron Katie mechanism where she does her work, that's what I'm doing in my way. That's all it is you're resolving that the triggering that you're getting is coming because of an internal fear, not an external fear. And that's
Yeah.
all it is. So that's where I put my pressure on these days. And I have a journal. I will journal out so I can get myself through that mechanism where I'm like, here's the feeling I'm feeling. Like even just yesterday, I was feeling controlled, right? I'm feeling controlled. I'm really pissed off. I'm having anxiety because I'm feeling controlled, and that feeling feels forever. And something outside of myself is stopping me, and I never can get what I want, blah, blah, blah. I was feeling that feeling. So instantly I go to start writing it all out, and I write out the story. I'm like, here's what I'm feeling. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm like, I am feeling this way because I feel like a victim. I'm feeling like a victim because my brain believes that I, in my own story, have all the information that I need. Actually, if I look at my math and I look at my functions, what's really happening is I wasn't doing enough control. I wasn't doing enough planning. I wasn't doing enough communicating. I wasn't doing enough blasting. And therefore, the outside universe had to creep into my world. That's it.
So the distinction that you are trying to point at is more like when the suffering is happening, like when you're saying someone controlled you or something, it
Yeah.
seems like life is happening to you, right? And you have this
Yes.
reaction to life.
Yes.
But through the journaling process, you are realizing that, damn, this life is happening from me. And that
Yes.
journaling process helps you become more aware of that. And
Yes.
because you are realizing that, oh, this is something I am causing.
Right.
So can I let go? And then you do the turnaround and stuff like that. So,
1000%.
yeah, is
Because the
that what you're
goal is
saying?
to get free.
Yeah, that's nice.
If you're
Yeah.
a victim, then you really are stuck. And then you should really be triggered.
And just for the audience here, I think what you're mentioning by free is both from free from the griefs and also the joys from life, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because most people will think, oh, this person is just trying to like free from suffering, but to like get some higher. But I think you are trying to like detach from both the happiness and the sorrow so that you get the sustained happiness or joy.
Yeah, because technically the pursuit of the human to climb to the top of some mountain, some goal, whatever, is still built into the wiring of the human. There's still a desire for. I had this long ass equation that I did one time where it basically ended up movement equals life. Like when I closed the whole equation and I just went from the front to the back, it was movement equals sign life. And it's because if you think of, if you're stagnant, there's the panic, there's it's death. When you're sleeping, there's no movement. And when you're dying, there is no movement, there is death. That is what the ultimate death is non-movement. And the human desires movement. So it desires to grow, it desires to continue to climb the next mountain. And that's part of the pursuit of happiness. Part of the pursuit of happiness is building
Yeah.
the self internally, or even getting external building. And
Yeah.
that's how all of us survive. So that part of it is coming from. I'm sorry, I feel like I lost what you were originally asking because I was telling this whole story. Were you really
No,
what were
no,
was
I
that
think
what you
you
were getting at?
answered. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think what you're also trying to say that right now is like, I also genuinely believe that there's like grace in suffering,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that I feel there's a grace in the entire process itself. I think the
Yeah.
process is the gift that life is giving us rather
Yes.
than the end holy grail aspect of hero's journey. Because
For
it's like,
sure.
unless you enter a dark room, you don't have the opportunity to see the light, right?
Right. Yeah. 1000%. 1000%. Yeah, the patience on the self, the mental freedom, the ability to move from one struggle to the next struggle is where the person starts gaining that joy and that happiness in life. And a lot of times it will take a lot of time. A lot of times it will take you you know, 3 wheelbarrows a day for 5 years, where you're just
Yeah,
stacking very small wins every day before you ever see anything because of it. And it's being able to take joy in that long process of
yeah,
growth. I know I can feel this in a lot of the people in our community, what we were talking about earlier, where the impatience factor is, why isn't it now? And Dave and I have had to get to where we are very patiently going after the lowest of the lowest of the non-glamorous. Nobody wants to talk about, well, you're working on a server today. You know, it's this very low, very non-praised thing that you as the human is like, I know where this could eventually go. I know that the community could eventually be there. I know that we could be a part of the community way down the road when I have all these things to manage it. Right now, I'm working on a server. And it's extremely unsatisfying, except if you can accept the whole process of, I know where I will be in 10 years, even though it's very unsatisfactory today, but I'm going to choose to start mentally attaching my joy to the journey instead of the give me the cookie right now, you know? So yeah,
no,
that freedom, sorry, one last thing, the freedom is coming from non-stuck, that I can build. I am allowed to build. I'm allowed to chip away instead of the pressure that my own brain puts on me and traps me and says, you're stuck. Don't try anything. Don't go anywhere. You know, you want to be free of that.
yeah, I also feel like the impatience and all that stuff from the community is coming from like a deep sense of love to the work that you do,
Oh,
like they
totally.
wanted to see it manifest so
Totally.
fast. You know what I
Yes,
mean? So
for
it's not
sure.
just all,
Yes.
but it's coming from the desire. I want
Yes.
this to become famous now, so that
Yes.
I can have like
Yes.
more people and more stuff. But it takes a lot of work.
Right, right. I'm like, hey, then you get started.
Yeah,
Like, again, it's back to like, don't let yourself be stuck. If you
yeah,
feel that anxiety, then pick up a fucking shovel. I'm over here shoveling away. Like, well, I wish you were done with that hole. Me too. Grab a damn shovel. You get started. The amount of pressure you're wanting you're wanting something to happen, and you feel like it's outside of your own self, and therefore there's anxiety, and Dave and Shan are standing in the way of this thing that you want to have happen. Of course, it's a lot of times built on love. It's a lot of times built on I want this, a desire. I want this thing, I want it
But the
now.
desire itself is like the bubble of the self in that desire is a little bit constricted. Right?
Right.
That's why they're
And
not able to empathize with you because they never run a business themselves, right?
that exactly, they have no idea what they're asking for. It's a kid asking for a pony, and the parent just goes, oh god.
$20 for a pony? Really?
I want a pony. Yeah, right. Right. No, yeah. I want a horse. Okay, that's $4,000 a month to pay for its feeding. By the way, you have to clean it up every single day. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, asking for something outside of your own understanding, it puts a lot of pressure on the self. It's back to now happiness. If somebody can't be happy, if they're putting that kind of pressure on themselves, if I don't get XYZ, then I won't be happy. Pulling it all the way back around, what I do usually see. So one that we heard recently was like, why aren't you guys on the Tom Tom show? You guys should be on the Tom Tom show, right? So that's one that I heard quite a bit recently. And I just roll my eyes because I'm like, the amount of fuckoffery that would cause in my lower ended systems that I don't have built yet it would break the machine, right? But of course, somebody who hasn't run their own business, that isn't on the groundwork, that isn't in there shoveling with you, has no idea what they're asking for. They're asking for a pony.
Yeah.
Um,
I
what
empathize. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%, right? Like, and it's hard too, because how do you tell the 5-year-old what it would mean to the experience? It's like, who was it that said that? It's Carl Jung, I think. Wisdom gained without experience, or beware of wisdom gained without experience, right? You have to, like, people can think they know something, but then if they haven't actually gone through the experience of
Yeah.
something, they
I
themselves
actually
have
written
not.
that down. That was the
Yeah.
one of the follow-up questions. I really
Yeah.
wanted to explore, man. I have like two more questions, very important questions that I wanted to explore.
Okay.
And one of that is I feel what OPS gives to a person, the gift that OPS gives is a conceptual empathy.
Yes. Right. Because you're
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I know how you feel. I now can see your puzzle pieces. I know your parts, which is why, like, we could never get mad at anybody. Like, you're
Yeah. Yeah.
like, I just like, we get a lot of, like, savior SCs will have the hardest time seeing their self patterns, right? It's literally demon and I. And then they'll use the sensory and be like, oh, that's not my type because sensory this. Oh, that's not my type because Dave and Shan visual type. Like, they'll literally give you sensory examples. And you're just like, heartbreaking, because you're like, I can't tell you. I didn't type you because you looked like so and so. That was
Yeah.
the
And
stupid thing I shit out and I said to you. That's not how I typed to you. But, like, how could you deliver that to somebody? And now all you're feeling for them is like, damn, that kind of blindness to the whole picture of what's going on. Like, I wish I could give this to you, but all I can do is feel empathy and sadness, and be so thankful for the ones that get it. Like, because the
yeah,
amount
yeah.
of SEs that are like, holy shit, and they see their self patterns, you're like, oh, you are amazing. Now you can even, like, just love and give and be thankful for the ones that got themselves out. Like, that's also the opposite side. You feel a deep sorrow and empathy over here, and then a massive, like, intense joy and thankfulness for those
Yeah,
that.
that's what I'm coming to realize as well. I feel for most humans, they're not going to walk this path, which is
Yeah.
okay, whatever, right? But I
Right.
feel I really ask, like, what really does matter in a person?
Yeah.
And I feel, irrespective of type, whatever type that person might be, I feel what really matters is like the perspective and how they approach life itself,
Right.
irrespective of type. Because I've been in the community and I've had all sorts of friends, right?
Right.
And today, if I look, the people I still talk to, there is no OPS pattern. You know what I mean? There's no
Yeah.
conceptual, there's
Yeah.
no mind pattern. If OPS was
Right.
mind, but there's definitely like a heart pattern. Like you just
Yeah.
resonate with some stuff,
Right.
and you're like, you know what, we are okay. Like they can take care of your darkness, you can take care of their darkness. You're okay with you. There's a sense of acceptance, which I feel
Yeah.
OPS gives you more easily.
Right. Right. I definitely
Yeah,
feel safer when I'm around someone who can start tracking and catching themselves.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That when someone doesn't overuse the blame mechanism, As soon as I start seeing somebody overuse the blame mechanism, I'm out. I'm like out, instantly out. Because I know how hard that is, that they haven't even gotten started. If someone has the ability to go, I'm in a bad situation, let me stop and pause and track myself, then you can help them. Until someone gets themselves. So it's really hard because you're like, but somebody's drowning. And
Yeah.
it's like, all I can do is throw them a video. You can't try and reason with them. Otherwise, you're getting your hair pulled down and drowned.
Yeah. Now
If
let's
someone swims to the side and stops blaming, then you can help them.
okay. Now let's go into like some this territory. Okay, going
Okay.
a little bit against the tribe. Yeah. Now
Okay.
I feel
I can see
demon
when you're like,
energy. Let's go.
yeah, let's do some. I can see when you're moving into your demons. Yeah.
No. I'm just like giving this precaution so that when I go
Yes,
after them,
precaution.
I have like this. Yeah, like brace yourself.
Trigger warning here.
Yeah, exactly. This is my trigger warning.
I do that
So
too.
what I feel is there are like people who take OPS and get a sense of a conceptual understanding, and then they feel they have an experiential understanding. Like
1000%.
in my case, I feel I did have that in like the first year, but as I really started understanding the functions and the perspective, as I keep getting and using OPS, only realize that I know less and less about everything.
Right. That's a good place to be. I think they call that, what is that, conscious, the unconscious of the unconscious
uh,
conscious, you know, that
yeah,
whole
yeah,
like,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
like right about here. Yeah.
yeah. I'm like, But there are like some people who can take OPS and they could like conceptually understand something, but
Hmm.
experientially they might have zero data. I
Right.
think, can I call him out? Doesn't matter. I recently there's like a person, right? I
Yeah.
recently made a video on him as well. Some guy,
Oh, yeah.
some
Poor
guy
thing.
just I mean, I empathize with them. I think that happens every like 6 months or
Empathy.
something,
Yes.
so it's not
Yes.
like something new. But he just
Yes.
came, you know what, I saw OPS videos like for a month, and I would give it, I don't know, 3 out of
Right.
5 stars. I'm like, yo, what's going on, dude?
Right. Really, really good. Okay, so I have two things to say about that, and I'll say them out
Yeah.
loud so you can remind me later when my feminine sensory.
Uh-huh.
So number one, there's always something below that is the fear that is driving that kind of communication, right? There's always something at the
Yeah.
core that is fearful, and therefore the person will shoot flares in order to distract from the deeper, darker fear, right? So that's always a thing, and that happens with everyone. And then the second thing is, um, when you're seeing someone that is so TE, right, spectrum of intelligence, when you're coming into a situation and you're hearing somebody use the lowest end arguments, it's almost like draining for the people that are kind of in it. So for, let me just use a stupid example like Christianity, right, where like, let's say you go
Damn.
in, right, let's say you go into Christianity and you're like, I don't agree with Christianity because of the problem of evil. There's evil in the world. And then every like preacher and apologetics, master opens up their booklet to page 1, chapter 1, sentence 1. And they're like, all right, the problem of evil, where they're going after the lowest ended arguments that are not even worth talking about anymore. Right. So and what's fascinating is, for me, what's fascinating, because I'm an EJ and I watch the community, what's fascinating is how many people are moved by someone standing up and making the lowest of the lowest ended arguments, where it's like, but the problem of evil. And like every Christian is like, dude, that's,
Yeah, they go like that. Yeah.
right. So that's
No.
that's kind of like,
Mhm.
you can only have empathy because you're seeing someone that is waving a flag and saying, I'm scared about this. And they're literally dealing with like something that's at the low, like that could be explained in one sentence,
Yeah, no, I completely get that, because what that says to me is, okay, you came here with some problem and you just didn't find it in OPS, you know what I mean? And
Right.
it's fair, I feel. I don't feel this for everyone. I personally like it. I don't feel you should like it. And
Right.
probably it is not for everyone.
Right. Totally.
But I
Totally.
but I feel what is lacking with every person is a sense of investigation. I feel
Yeah.
people so blindly believe an authority figure that
Yes.
they take very less time to like introspect
1000%.
and see, okay, is what you are saying right now and during all this interview is true,
Right. Very good. You would want to, and this is one thing that I see in mass, is that people have a very difficult time to know whether somebody's a good guy or a bad guy. Just to know,
Yeah,
like, Trump, how do you resolve that? Fauci is a good one that everyone's like, oh my God, he's bad, he's evil. No, he's
yeah,
good. No, it's like people have a very difficult time resolving. Bill Gates, like, oh, he's definitely evil. It's like people have a very difficult time resolving whether someone is bad or good. So that's like part of it. And the second part of it is like people have a very difficult time slowing down their brain to do the scientific method to actually resolve whether someone is speaking from um, a depth of I've done my objective homework here, or
yeah,
I'm in a fearful state. Nobody can track that. Nobody can track why somebody is saying what they are saying. What is the cause? Why is somebody amped up? Who hurt you? Who
yeah,
hurt you? Why are you on this crusade? Because what's deeper down going on in someone's life? Because this is what's fascinating to me when somebody's going through something in their own life, whether they have a fuck off with their family, their relationships, their boss, their trajectory of their life, when they are having a massive fuck offery, somehow, some way, they're super motivated to go tell everybody what needs to get done, right? And I call it the grabbing of the wheel. If you're in a car and you're having anxiety because you're driving around cliffs, you panic and then you grab the wheel and then you drive the car off the cliff because you're in a panic state and you're like, I would feel safe if I was the one driving. Like, no, you're in a panic state. You should not be the one driving. But that's often what you can see. If somebody's in a fearful emotional state, it's very easy to track down and look at their path and go, oh, this is what you're upset about. But your brain is not letting you see that. So therefore you have massive empowerment of I need to be listened to. I need to take the reins. I need to be in control. And it's the rest of, if we look at ourselves like a dog pack, all the other chihuahuas are all moved by the one that's going, like we just emotionally react because someone else is reacting, right? It's like they're upset and oh no, and now what do we do? It's like this emotional like fuck offery where you're like, it was just someone scared and they went over here and threw the projection and threw the blame on this random topic that they don't fully understand. So being able to stop and pause and go, all right, I've put in my time. I know what it looks like when someone is calm in a peaceful state, not in a manic state, when someone is peacefully, calmly doing the work, putting together the puzzle pieces. And a lot of times you'll hear somebody being like, hey guys, I really am sorry. And this sucks, but this is what the numbers are saying. And everyone's
yeah.
like, we hate you because they're like, you must
Shoot
be
the
bad.
messenger. Yeah, yeah.
Shoot the messenger because I don't like that information. And now that must mean that you're bad and not being able to even resolve in their own
Yeah,
self
that
where their fears are coming from.
that information threatens my survival and I don't know what
Yes.
to do about it. So let me like come
Yes.
at you and like kill
That
you.
thousand
The,
percent.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And what's beautiful about that is when you can see someone else doing that, you then get to go back to your own self and go, oh, I did that yesterday in
Yeah.
a smaller way. I didn't go do a fucking video about it, but I did that. And now I can see that in my own life. Oh, that's why I had this problem over here. The more you can put that pressure back on your own self, you can continue on the pathway to getting yourself unstuck and free when you can see other people panicking, taking the wheel, driving into but it's still sad. It's still sad for me watching a community get riled up about something and using blame mechanisms that are lower ended arguments that you're like, I wish we could talk because I could explain that real
Man,
quick.
you know, what I'm realizing is like most of my suffering, right? My suffering is
Right.
like coming on to like holding on to stuff that I feel would be permanent, that I feel would
Yes.
exist forever. But I feel like life is just like a reminder, reminder
Yeah.
that everything is impermanent, nothing lasts forever. And that's the
Right.
problem, I feel both the joys and suffering, I feel with time, 6 months later, nobody will even remember it. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So
Thousand
why even
percent.
involve yourself,
And that comes back to pain now versus pain later. That's that exact mechanism of being so patient with self and patient with reality because of how long it takes to build anything real. And it does help, like I've looked at like Einstein and how many years he had before he proved to everyone, the taking of the picture, and he had to go through wars to get a fucking photo, like how much hell that guy had to go through before anybody ever was like, okay, I believe in what you're doing. Ridiculous. Like he had to get sensory, and it took him that many years to get the fucking sensor. And it's, Oprah, how long she actually took to build her life. How many, you hear somebody saying in a biography, oh, that took 8 years. Oh, that took 20 years. And you're like, okay, that's a long time. But if you
Yeah.
can see what it takes to build, now you got to deal with the emotional part of that, because it's
Yeah.
heartbreaking, because you're like, I don't want to wait. I have the impatience factor. I want it now. I want it yesterday. I'm sitting in fire.
Easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Already.
Yeah. I want
There's
it
a
easy.
there's an entire thing that will happen called six-pack shortcut.
Yeah.
And I love that word, right? It's like, oh,
Yes.
get six-pack shortcut. I'm like,
Yes. That was
Mike, I think.
Mike. Yeah. Mike Chang, is that his last
Yeah,
name?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
Mike.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I
Made a lot
love
of
Mike.
money. I love
I
that.
know.
I love that course name, or six-pack shortcut, because I feel it says so much about a human
Right.
being as a whole.
Yes. I love his stuff. He's an INFJ.
Uh,
I think we did a video on him one time. I think we did some YouTube video on him or something like that, making fun of his like workout routine. He had a good journey. I think he had a good break, and then came to realization of how much pressure he could put on himself to grow. He was a very interesting one. But the biggest thing that I would say, for my own self, we could say this and kind of start piecing together the ending here. Like it's it's two things, and Gary Vee talks about this a lot. It is about the journey. If you're not in love with the journey of getting your own self out of your own matrix, then you're missing it, right? You have to
yeah,
be in love with the journey. If you're waiting for someday, then you will never be happy, because someday comes and that wasn't fulfilling. And then you're like, maybe the next one. I watch people that get super excited about holidays, and you're like, dude. And then the holiday happens and they're like, that was miserable. I hated that. That was miserable. I hated that. Maybe the next holiday. And it's like pushing off satisfaction to the next high. And that's not happiness. That's not joy. There's no fulfillment in there. There's no depth of fulfillment in there, because you're waiting for a chemical boost that goes way up and down immediately. And it's a miserable, miserable life. If you can fall in love with the journey, where you're like, today I won, because I said to myself, I promised myself I was going to do these 3 things, and I fucking did it. I crossed them off. I feel so good. This interview was one of my 3 things. How, like, okay, you're either going to do it or you're not. I'm going to get to cross that off and tell my brain, you self did something good for your own self. Good job. You did this. And that is a little chemical high that I will get from building into my own character. And I'm doing that every day. So how much joy am I giving myself over time? A lot, a lot. So the
yeah.
journey is where the joy comes from. And I
Part
would
of,
say this
yeah,
second
yeah,
part of that, let me just say this and then I'll be done. You have to create those goals. And everyone's terrified of creating goals because they're scared they won't fulfill them. And of course, make them smaller so you can fulfill them, because the point is to grow belief in self. You have to be the one responsible for growing belief in self. So draw some lines in the sand. You want to draw those lines in the sand, crawl across that sand, and believe that you did. And now that's your joy. That's your life.
yeah,
Your life is full and very full of gratitude because of all of these lines you're crossing daily, weekly, monthly, all the time, never
yeah.
waiting for someday.
So this is what OPS is really about, right? It's not about trying to fix your family or your significant other. How do I
Right.
get my work coding done? Or how do I figure that? I think that's one more thing I like. How do I figure out the system even more?
Right.
What's the point though?
Right. What's the point? What are you going to do
Like
with
what
this
really
information?
matters in the end of the, yeah, like
Right.
you have more information now. Now what? I feel that's a huge for me as if
Right.
I'm gathering so much information. After a point, it was like, but what really matters?
Yes. Right. And that's back to Carl Jung's statement of beware of wisdom gathered without experience. I think that was the wording,
Yeah,
something like that. But
yeah,
it's basically saying you could, and this is happening so much these days because of the internet, you could just gather and gather and gather and get all the wisdom of the universe and still be living in your mom's basement where you're
Yeah.
not engaging reality. You're not actually taking any steps on your own internal journey. All of this extroverted knowledge never then builds into the self identity,
Yeah.
because the way I see it is the hero's journey is not about the journey, it's about the hero. It's about being somebody that you don't respect and building into someone that you do respect. And the way that you do that is putting little tiny pressures on yourself that were
Yeah.
hard for you, and then conquering those. And now you feel empowered and free. That's it.
Yeah.
Nobody
And by
cares
the
what
way,
you
for the
did.
people, yeah, and by the way, for the people watching here, this is something she said to me like 2 years ago,
I
which
said
is
that
why
exact thing.
no, which is why I have this YouTube channel, because
Yeah,
I had
that's
like a
right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because
It's
I had like a
comfortable.
because I had a very
Yay.
realistic expectation, and you said something like you have to like put out a lot of bad things so that the good ones can follow, you know,
Yes, yes, yes.
and you have
That's
to allow
right.
yourself, to like put out bad things. I'm like,
Yes,
what? Yeah, I'm always in this fantasy of, oh, I want to like put out the best thing. But
right.
yeah,
That's back to I'm feeling bad. I feel like a victim. Why do I feel like a victim? Because my brain is saying I am not allowed to produce, demon blast. I'm not allowed to produce anything that isn't perfect.
yeah,
And therefore the world is unfair because they demand that I produce things that are perfect. No,
yeah,
that's your own matrix. That's coming from you. Everybody else is living their own matrix. No one expects anything of you. So when you get information, people will complain. People still complain, right? That's
yeah, yeah,
really their own projections that just happen to be bouncing off your matrix,
yeah,
It's still what the human is projecting that reality is demanding of them.
yeah,
And you got started because you decided to rebuild that part of your matrix, to decide, I'm not going to only produce when it's perfect.
yeah,
Therefore, I can get moving, which is more important. Now that's taking a pain now and squashing it for actual more happiness and joy over time. Because you're like,
and
I
that,
might get a little
yeah,
pain. Maybe somebody will be like, that was a shitty video. You're like, that's fine. I'm going to do another one next week. I'm going to do another one next week. I'm going to do another one next week. When we get the comments of you guys are not doing enough, I have a laundry list of things for you to do. I take that pain that it causes me and I put it into, that's fine. I don't take on that in my worldview.
pressure, yeah,
Yeah, I don't put that into my matrix. That's not my goals. Everyone
yeah,
has their own, like everyone has their version of what op is, and therefore they believe that they need to now demand that from the idiots that discovered it. And that's not my goal.
I want
Mine's
to
a
end up,
50-year goal.
yeah, and I
50 to
want to end off
100.
with that.
Yeah.
I feel OPS is like is I feel OPS is very neutral in nature. I feel if OPS
Yeah.
was an ice cream, it's very has no taste. And I feel you as a soul have like different flavors,
Yes.
chocolate, vanilla, and stuff. And
Yes.
that gives the color to the OPS. And
Yes.
everyone have different flavors of OPS running within them. And they feel
Yeah.
that their conceptual framework of how they use OPS is the real one.
Right.
However, I feel what really matters, and that's something you're pointing is how you use it to get out of the matrix and heal
Right.
yourself, grow yourself,
Right.
and live a more fulfilling life.
Right.
And I feel
Because at the
that
end
is
of the
what
day, yeah,
OPS is about. Yeah.
that's so good. At the end of the day, you're stuck with your own matrix.
Yeah.
That's it. You're stuck with your own matrix. How do you want to live your own life? Because if you're putting pressure on other people and that's the only way you're going to be happy, then you are living a miserable life because you're stuck in your own self. You're making your own self trapped. It's just not a
Yeah.
good, fulfilling life. So you can
Yeah.
choose. You can choose to create a life where everything is in your empowerment to free yourself to go to the next level, to
Yeah.
keep that movement going.
Giving yourself the permission to look within.
You're allowed.
You're allowed to do DI. Let's go. All right, guys, that's it for this interview.
Thank
I had
you.
a cool name for this interview as well. I have this interview is called Beyond OPS. Yeah.
Ooh.
That's
So
it.
any abstract.
That's it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one.
Bye.
Uh, Okay, here's like a practical tip, guys, post interview. I think the one thing that people do a mistake in typing, and if you got your type from Shan, and I think you would agree with this,
Yeah.
is you guys are like looking at the entire type as one thing. But I think what people should look at the type is in terms of coins, Like
Yeah.
even if Shan got two of the nine coins right, that's still like a lot of
Right.
information for you that you can like use to
Right.
like build your darkness, if that was the goal.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's so
But
true. Yeah. And also I would encourage people, I think it's funny because I thought that this would matter a lot more, is to own the statistics and the pathway that Dave and I came to get to where we're at right now. I think a lot of people don't really look at that when they don't like their type. They start throwing things like, it's because I said this in my video. It's because I got visually typed. They throw it to very surface level sensory things. If you track the pathway of how many thousands of people Dave and I typed off from each other until we could start reoccurringly seeing the patterns, and that we didn't even come to the community until we were above 90%, 85, 90%. Like the statistical impossibility of all of that, you now track back and go, what the hell are you guys seeing? Because anyone that would say
yeah,
something like, oh, it's because they just have the same biases. If you could see how different Dave and I type someone, you wouldn't say that, because we have completely different minds, totally different functions, different way of processing information. We come at type completely different. There's something that, like, there's no way you could see a human and the millions of different intricacies that a human says, feels, does, moves, said, like, all of that energy that a human brings to you. It's like a fire hose of information. And if you're
yeah.
not seeing reoccurring patterns that are happening in the human, you won't get it. You just
And
won't get it.
yeah, and the real point here is even if you wanted to improve your life,
Mhm.
it doesn't even matter if you get your complete type right. Even if you know you're
Yes.
an EP, that's still like enough information for you to like change your complete life around,
Right. Right.
if your goal is self-improvement.
Right. But if you don't, if your goal is not self improvement, you will use the typing as a way, as another way to stick you back into your own matrix box. I'm stuck. I can't move
Yeah,
forward. All I'm going to do now is argue on comment sections for here to it, like,
yeah.
what did you do to your life? Like, you
They
got
use
new
OPS as an
information.
excuse.
Yes, that you now used more information coming in to give you reasons and excuses to put yourself back into a box. Get
Yeah,
moving, do something with your life. Like,
yeah,
let's say it was off. Let's give a benefit of a doubt. Let's say we typed them totally wrong, right? Like, what the fuck are you doing with your life? Why are
yeah,
you not going, I'm going to use something in this for good?
yeah,
Because you can choose to use information for, I found a way to get stuck, or I found a way to get out. And it's really about the identity of the person, nothing to do with their type, nothing to do with their
yeah.
type.
And I feel what really matters is what are you doing with your life, and are you having the courage enough to follow your dreams.
1000%.
And that's
That's it.
what it is really about, not
Yeah.
getting your type right or getting other people's type right.
Right. Very good. Just a
All
tool,
right.
just information.
Yep.